politicians were liquidating many of the assets of industry. They were feeding them as cash into an ever-booming stock market. In future, it would be the millions of small shareholders who would decide where that money should go. The market was now increasingly shaping the future of the economy, not the politicians. And the men who appeared for the moment to control the market were the tycoons from the Clermont Club. And the tycoons were about to be joined by a new, even more ruthless member. He too was going to use the growing power of the market to build an empire, but not in Britain, in Africa. And yet again, he was going to deceive politicians.
I have it in command from the Queen to read to you the following message from Her Majesty. As you assume the heavy responsibilities of independence, I send my good wishes for a great and noble future.
Through the 1960s, Britain gave independence to her former colonies in Africa. But what was left behind were hundreds of plantations, factories and mines, all still owned and run by the British. They had provided the wealth of the empire. Into this world came a new type of entrepreneur. He was called Tiny Rowland, and he ran a small mining company called Lonro. Rowland was convinced there was a fortune to be made in independent Africa, and he was going to do it by taking over Britain's old colonial industries. And what's more, the new African leaders would help him do it.
At the time, all the established companies in Africa were pulling out because of the political situation and other problems there, and he just moved in and brought them up for a song, virtually. I mean, when Rowland took over Lonro, it was a very sleepy little company, but within 2 or 3 years of Rowland appearing on the scene, it escalated beyond all recognition. He was quite amazing, the deals he did.
The potential of in those days, black Africa was huge, and I wanted to become involved.
When you say potential, do you mean the potential for making money, or for diversifying your interests, for having power? In what terms do you talk about potential?
Not in terms of making money alone or having power. That never occurred to me. The excitement, the interest which I thought I would be acquiring, the people I would be able to meet, the vast openings on the continent, these were the ones which attracted me most of all.
The takeover that made Rowland powerful in Africa and in Britain came in 1968. He used ruthless methods to get hold of the richest gold mine in the world, the Ashanti gold mine in northern Ghana. It had been run by a British company for over 80 years, and the chairman was a famous war hero, General Edward Spears. He lived in colonial splendour at the centre of the mine. He had his Rolls-Royce shipped out, and every week fresh grouse was flown from London. To the African miners, he was their ruler.
Now, this group of pictures here, I think, are of the more of the mine workers. This man has obviously just come off shift. And I rather think this was one of the mine policemen. And then the two dear old men up here who worked more distantly for the mines, I think. I think that these pictures really represent the people over whom Spears had great control and was more or less a patriarch. And I think they show that the Ashanti were very fine people who Spears respected tremendously, and equally they respected him.
There was no way Rowland could buy Ashanti outright. He couldn't raise enough money. So secretly he flew to Ghana to see the country's new rulers. He offered them a deal. Instead of being exploited by the old colonials like General Spears, he would run the mine in partnership with them. All they had to do was to cancel Speirs's lease on the mine and give it instead to him. He also allegedly gave them money. They agreed. When the news that the lease was being terminated was leaked to the London Stock Exchange, the price of Ashanti's shares crashed, and Rowland moved in and bought the company for a song.
Tiny Rowland really squared the Ghana government so that Speirs couldn't resist the takeover bid, and eventually felt it was in the best interest of his shareholders to accept Tiny Rowland's offer. The impression I got was that he was extremely able and very ruthless tycoon, really.
Rowland now flew round Africa in his private jet, doing similar deals and building a vast industrial empire for himself. To the African politicians, he presented himself as a new partner, building with them a modern industrial Africa. But like Slater and the other takeover men, he was deceiving them. Rowland was stripping as much of the profits out of the companies as he could and feeding it back into the London stock market. In turn, his share price went up and he could do more takeovers. It was growth by acquisition, not by investment.
The country was really being cheated. It's millions of dollars.
And where did that money go?
It definitely didn't come to Zambia. It went to London.
To London?
Yes.
What's your reaction about that?
I'm furious.
Who do you hold responsible for that?
All those people who perpetrated such an empire and such a trail of betrayal.
Betrayal?
Yes, for development program of the country.
Tiny Rowland says he loves Africa.
Because Africa has enriched him, so he would love it. He definitely loves it because it has enriched him. The relationship between Tiny Rowland and African presidents is not really sincere and honest. It's the relationship between the rider and the horse. It's the rider who benefits. I don't think the horse benefited at all.
Rowland just wanted power. He just wanted to control events and people. And I think money as well, of course. That you can't do either of those without the third of those. But he just wanted complete power over his domain. He would lie, he would put one person against another, he would do anything to achieve his aim.
Tiny Rowland now became a close friend of Jim Slater and the other takeover tycoons. They dined together at the Clermont and sold each other companies. All of these new tycoons were making fortunes by tearing up an old system of industrial power that had dominated Britain and its empire for over 100 years. But they were about to become even richer and even more powerful. And yet again it was to happen by accident, as the politicians desperately tried one more time to make Britain's ailing economy grow.
The Queen has asked me to form the next government, and I am indeed proud to accept. To govern is to serve. This government will be at the service of all the people, the whole nation.
In 1970, the Conservatives were returned to power, led by Edward Heath. Heath presented himself as a new kind of politician. He rejected the Keynesian idea that governments could control the economy. He would give up government intervention in industry and let the lame ducks go to the wool. It was the Thatcherite philosophy, 10 years ahead of its time. But the consequences were terrifying. Within months, scores of factories closed and unemployment soared. And in 1971, Rolls-Royce, Britain's most famous company, declared it was bankrupt. Heath decided the experiment had failed. The government would reassert control over the economy.
We are not prepared to tolerate the human waste and suffering that accompany persistent unemployment. We stand by those words today. The measures we have taken this year